We're going to start with Barrett from the LDS Church History Department. Ann has a BA in Art History and master's degrees in Architectural History from Virginia Commonwealth University and a master's of Library Science from the University of North Carolina. She's currently working in the Church History Department, where she is researching the buildings in Nauvoo, most notably the Nauvoo Masonic Hall. And so we'll let Ann go first, and then we'll introduce our other two papers and presentations after.
Give a little hearty chuckle to start. I'm going to start off my presentation today with the following description. It was an impressive line as we headed out into beautiful countryside where the wildflowers were in full bloom. It was exciting to see a cooperation and friendships develop as one group would help another through the challenges of streams, bogs, logs, hills, and mud and a steep mountain climb. Even a big downpour of rain could not dampen the spirits of these hardy pioneers. The preceding statement may seem like an account of one of the thousands of Latter-day Saints who journeyed across the continental United States between 1847 and 1869. However, this entry comes from the web blog of a senior missionary sister who is serving in Mongolia. Why would an LDS congregation in Mongolia be interested in reenacting the Mormon Pioneer Trek? A trek that originally took place in the United States in the mid-19th century. Originally an outgrowth of highly publicized pioneer commemoration events, trek reenactments have allowed international members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to tie into its sacred foundational history, a history of God's dealings with his chosen covenant people. While tying into the collective identity of the church or covenant people, international members have also asserted their distinctive regional identities using Pioneer Trek reenactments. This paper will discuss the history and evolution of these treks, situating them within the notion of identity and collective memory. First, we will explore the history of trek reenactments. Second, we will look at popular versus variant forms. Third, the dual role of trek reenactments will be explained in terms of identifying with the collective church while asserting regional distinctiveness. Finally, I'll sum up my findings, followed by a very brief coda, looking to the future and iterations and interpretations of Pioneer Trek reenactment. Trek reenactments made their grand entree during the celebrations commemorating the arrival of the Vanguard Company, which was the first to enter the Salt Lake Valley on July 22nd, 1847. In 1897, the year of the centennial celebration, during the 50th anniversary, of the celebration of the arrival of the Saints, a group organized the first major trek reenactment of that first arrival in the valley. Major trek reenactments followed in 1947, the centennial year, 1997, the sesquicentennial year, and 2006, the sesquicentennial of the Martin and Willie Handcart companies. Anthropologist Eric Eliason writes, quote, "Pioneer mythology, as it has been passed on to modern Mormons, has been shown to be a constant construction created, reinforced, and maintained by popular public displays and celebrations," end quote. Indeed, Pioneer Trek reenactments are an extension of these public displays and celebrations. Following the highly publicized sesquicentennial treks both in 1997 and 2006, handcart treks proliferated throughout the United States. The first treks occurring in international locations happened in conjunction with or soon after these commemorative events, which served to popularize treks among Latter-day Saint membership. Following the commemorations, treks transcended national borders by way of members, missionaries, and media outlets. Church leaders based in Salt Lake City urged members throughout the world to focus their attention on the Pioneer Trek during the 1997 commemoration. In October 1996 General Conference, Elder M. Russell Ballard directed, quote, "Join with us and begin now to prepare for a spiritual journey next year by walking in the footsteps of our beloved pioneers in every land," end quote. During April 1997 General Conference, other general authorities joined Elder Ballard in encouraging participation in memorializing the pioneer forebears. Osamu Sakaguchi, a Japanese church member, participated in the 1997 sesquicentennial trek reenactment from Nebraska to Utah with his wife and 2 sons. The reenactment garnered national attention in the U.S. as news agencies covered the story, with particular attention given to the Sakaguchis. The Sakaguchis were not the only international church members to participate in the sesquicentennial trek, however. German members Gunther and Christa Liebig also completed the trek from Nebraska to Salt Lake, utilizing restored wagons brought from Germany. Although the Liebigs and Sakaguchis participated in this pioneer reenactment based in the United States, their participation and the subsequent publicity did much to promote participation in treks on a global scale. Treks were no longer just for American Latter-day Saints. The sesquicentennial trek was mirrored in several international locales as church members in other areas of the world planned treks of their own. Members in Siberia built 2 handcarts that were paraded at 17 stops in major Russian and Ukrainian cities. While making their way through Russia and Ukraine, church members filled the carts with written testimonies and traditional toys. Following these public parades, 1 cart was shipped to the U.S., where it joined the sesquicentennial trek. Members in Rome, Italy, carried out a trek in covered wagons, moving past ancient monuments there. The sesquicentennial pioneer celebration truly acted as a catalyst of reinterpretation and reiteration of pioneer trekking in an international context. In 2001, in commemoration of the emigration of the first Scandinavian members of the church, Gunther Liebig led a wagon trek through Germany to Hamburg. This trek reenacted the overland journey made by 19th century converts who departed Europe on ships bound for America. This reenactment is a departure from the others that, up to 2001, commemorated the journey from the Midwestern United States to Salt Lake City. This was the first trek to commemorate emigration travel. 2006 marked the 150th anniversary of the Martin and Willie Handcart Company's trek. At least a handful of international handcart treks were reenacted in conjunction with the commemoration of those fateful companies. Perhaps most surprising are treks that occurred in Taiwan and in the Philippines. Since the commemoration of the Martin and Willie Handcart Companies in 2006, treks have continued to pop up in other international locales. These locations include, but are not limited to, Lithgow, Australia, Milan, Italy, and Erdenet, Mongolia. Generally, commemorations of events associated with 19th century pioneer migration provided the catalyst leading to treks occurring internationally. The 1997 sesquicentennial celebration, combined with counsel from church authorities to embrace the pioneering spirit, led to iterations among international church members. Evidence of early treks occurring outside the scope of anniversary celebrations is somewhat thin. A journal within the archives of the Church History Library, written by Delbert Dennis Schaub, captures the events of a trek between Hennifer, Utah, and the This Is the Place monument in Salt Lake City in 1966. As the group of young men and their advisors made their journey, Schaub recorded, quote, We were told we are the first handcart company to pass this way since the saints passed this way so long ago. There have been many hikers, horseback riders, but no carts. This is truly history in the making, end quote. Even if Schaub's group was not the first handcart reenactment since the saints migrated west, it seems reenactments were not common between 1947 and 1966. Primary documents regarding treks are silent for several decades following Schaub and his young men. The 1966 trek seems important, not only because it's an early example of a handcart trek reenactment, but it also took place outside the context of a church-wide commemorative event. Even though Schaub's trek was not highly publicized, it shows church members began to take initiative to plan and carry out treks at will. For example, members in Canada and members in Samoa completed treks in 2003, again, outside the context of commemorative events. A notable trek occurred in Mongolia in 2012 and again in 2013. Members traveled from many locations throughout Mongolia to participate, and each branch in Mongolia pulled their own cart through the Mongolian countryside. Many treks carried out in international locations have occurred surrounding pioneer commemorative events. However, especially within the last decade, treks have multiplied outside the context of these commemorative events, having been completed at the discretion of local authorities. Are these international treks similar to those performed within the United States? What are the regional variations, if any? It is first important to understand that treks are not strict portrayals of historic events. Rather, as Eliason argues, quote, they are the products of a selective combing through history that has chosen certain aspects for highlighting while omitting and downplaying others, end quote. Treks have truly developed over time, stressing aspects of the pioneer trek deemed important. No official church body has prescribed or outlined necessary components of trek reenactment. Rather, commercial entities and individuals participating in treks have interpreted and reinterpreted the experience to include certain elements. These elements are driven by both commercial enterprise and by individual motivations, spiritual or otherwise. While on trek, the modern world is left behind in order for participants to be immersed in the events of the past. These events provide an opportunity for youth to experience a small taste of pioneer life. Elements of treks are not prescribed. Rather, planners of treks rely on experiences of others, word of mouth, and published materials to form their own trek experience. The church created an official set of guidelines regarding youth handcart treks, published on LDS.org in November 2013. The document outlines safety precautions to be utilized on the treks and extols the virtue of thorough preparation. However, distinctive elements of treks are not prescribed or dictated by this document. Rather, it was created to manage risks associated with the treks. While there are no officially prescribed events for a given trek experience, many online resources exist to provide direction. Several websites are devoted entirely to planning and executing successful treks. These websites provide documentation on elements of a successful trek. Some of these elements include dressing in pioneer clothing, a women's pool where men leave the women to pull the handcarts without assistance, music, dancing, and other activities, time alone for scripture reading, journal writing, or receiving letters from parents or leaders, and the use of ice to simulate walking in wintry conditions, simulated deaths and burials, river crossings, the list goes on and on. Elements of successful treks appear in each international iteration. For example, both the 2006 trek in Taiwan and that of the same year in the Philippines utilized ice. Participants either walked on ice blocks or put their feet in buckets of ice water in an effort to understand what it would be like to walk in wintry conditions. Mongolian members crossed a deep river along their trek, requiring them to unload handcarts before crossing. Members in Northern Ireland dressed in pioneer-style clothing as they made their way through the Irish countryside. New approaches to treks emphasize different meanings audiences derive from them. The meaning of a historical display, writes David Glassberg, is not intrinsic, determined solely by the intention of the author, but changes as audiences actively reinterpret what they see and hear by placing it in alternative contexts derived from their diverse social backgrounds. Several issues underscore the history of pioneer trek reenactment in the LDS Church. From the start, reenactments carried out in international locations embody issues of collective versus regional identity. While seeking to identify with a foundational narrative common to every Latter-day Saint, international members have also explicitly declared regional uniqueness. This is particularly evident in the treks completed in conjunction with the 1997 Pioneer Sesquicentennial. Elder Charles Didier of the 70 summarized the interplay of both collective and regional identity when he said, "As the pioneers participated in the settling of the West, the Russians, with the same spirit, participate in the settling of the East. Both groups of pioneers endured the same kinds of challenges and hardships of walking by faith and establishing new bridges of progress. That is why the present people of Siberia understand so well the celebrations of the arrival of the pioneers in Utah." End quote. Additional expressions of identity came out of the treks in Rome in 1997 and in Germany in 2001. Giuseppe Pasta, National Director of Public Affairs for the Church, spoke of the Rome reenactment, quote, "This celebration was really for the members of the Church here in Rome. It is their way of saying that the restored gospel is in Rome to stay, and the pioneers here are the foundation that will never crumble." End quote. Not only did the Rome trek tie into the narrative of the 19th century pioneer migration, but it also focused on the identity of church members in Rome as devoted members of the church, creating their own pioneer legacy. Like the members in Russia and Italy, those in Germany identified with pioneers and asserted their role as modern-day pioneers. Gunther Liebig, who participated in the trek in Germany in 2001, described the event as, quote, "A chance to do something to convince the world that things are happening in the church in Germany," end quote. Thus, treks carried out in international locations have represented a dual identity for members located in associated regions. They are simultaneously incorporated into the 19th century foundational events of Mormonism, while they occupy a place apart from any previous group, anchored by geographic location and regional circumstance. Historically, treks surrounding pioneers' commemorative events have incorporated events and themes of missionary work and proselytizing, of seeking converts to the church through member outreach. They have been a kind of missionary work without too much talking. Treks accompanied by public commemoration celebrations have provided occasion for non-members to ask questions about the church and to request church materials, including copies of the Book of Mormon. Some of these events have likely led to convert baptisms. However, as treks have proliferated both in the United States and elsewhere, a shift has occurred. Rather than focusing on introducing non-members to the church, treks are centered on providing opportunities for the conversion of those participating. In other words, the focus is on conversion and retention of church members. Experiences designed to acquaint participants with pioneer struggles are meant to deepen commitment and testimony. Santiago Lopez, branch president of the Kamilagan Philippines branch, explained their 2006 trek was designed to test the faith of participants. While on the trek, another theme emerged. To know is good, to think is better, to do is best. By simply completing the trek, participants went beyond mere belief, achieving something higher. Pioneer Trek reenactments have long been practiced by church members in the United States. Commemoration of the 19th century westward migration, along with associated publicity, has provided the impetus for treks outside the United States. Within the last decade, treks completed in areas outside of America have multiplied. Through these treks, international members of the church connect to sacred Mormon history while asserting their identities as modern-day pioneers. New iterations and interpretations are springing up all the time, which leads me to a brief coda. Eliason wrote, quote, "The usefulness of traditional renditions of the Mormon pioneer story are showing some wear, and its associated rituals are no longer quite the unifying principles some scholars have described them as being," end quote. Book of Mormon themed treks, popularly known as Moroni's Quest, have recently been gaining traction in the international trek community, after having been established in Utah, of course. Several states in Canada reenacted Book of Mormon scenes during wilderness journeys in the summer of 2013. These Book of Mormon themed treks share many of the same elements of pioneer treks. Youth experience tests of physical endurance and learn principles of faith, obedience, and sacrifice, just as they would on a pioneer-themed trek. Treks with other themes like Zion's Camp, the life of Christ, and early church history are already springing up in the US and Canada. While new interpretations and iterations will crop up in other interpretations and iterations will crop up in other international locations, and how will those new interpretations shape the identity of international church members? I'll leave the question to you, but treks will no doubt provide rich material for future scholars and researchers. Thank you.